This is Melissa Hassett, Vice President of Client Delivery at ManpowerGroup, and I'm next on the RecTech podcast.
Welcome to RecTech, the podcast where recruiting and technology intersect. Each month, you'll hear from vendors shaping the recruiting world, along with recruiters who'll tell you how they use technology to hire talent. Now, here's your host, the mad scientist of online recruiting, Chris Russell.
Yes, indeed. This is RecTech, the only podcast that helps employers and recruiters connect with more candidates through technology-inspired conversations. Our mission is to teach you about the new tools and tactics for finding talent online. Today's show is a recruiter edition. The RecTech podcast is sponsored by our friends at Work Here, the hyperlocal candidate delivery system. You know the phrase, it's all about location, right? Well, the same is true in recruiting. All recruiting is local, as my friend John Sumser likes to say. What Work Here does is they target candidates with GPS precision through their geofencing ad platform. You can reach people who live closer to your office because a reduction in commute time can result in a 50% reduction in turnover rates. They will advertise your jobs on screens candidates use the most, their mobile phone. They target likely candidates who live near your locations with messaging that is delivered through in the social and mobile apps that they use most often. So it's your chance to connect with them, a local talent on their phones, wherever they are, in specific locations that you target near your offices. You can even do things like, target competitors as well, which is kind of a neat hack for recruiting when it comes to geofencing like this. So just head over to workhere.com and tell them you heard it on the RecTech podcast. All right, let's introduce our guest today. As Vice President of Client Delivery, Melissa Hassett is responsible for overseeing the strategic partnership between ManpowerGroup Solutions and RPO and high-volume employers. She acts as a strategic partner to clients, working to streamline processes, launch and manage large-scale staffing programs, and entrench herself in the client's business to deliver customized staffing solutions. She has more than 20 years' experience in recruiting as an employer and RPO buyer. Manpower just published a new report entitled What Retail Employers Need to Know About Candidate Preferences. So I saw that, and we'll discuss that report, among other things, in today's episode. Melissa joins me now on the phone from Spokane, Washington area. Melissa, welcome to RecTech. It's great to have you.
Hi, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So before we get to the report, I wanted to ask you a little about high-volume hiring, something that I haven't really tackled yet on the show. I wondered if you could kind of just start us out by saying, what are some of the core elements that go into making a good, successful high-volume hiring practice, would you say?
Well, it definitely depends on the industry these days, but everyone is struggling, right? So 97 months of job growth, hiring's heating up. It's certainly heating up for the holiday season. So in high volume, that's a particular focus for this year. And what we are seeing clients do is try and be creative. So when we're looking at holiday hiring, people are hiring earlier and earlier in the season. We saw some retailers, for example, start hiring for back to school and then are just going to keep those folks through the holiday season. And then we see companies trying to get more creative with things like their training programs or their perks and benefits that they offer employers. Just trying to make sure that the job is attractive to the people that are going to be able to fill that job and then be able to use some of those perks to retain that talent as well, since the talent is turning over quite a bit in the high volume space.
Yeah, we're seeing now things like Starbucks offering, educational benefits, health benefits as well, and Walmart. So it's finally good to see these things happening, I think, in the retail space, right? Yep.
Yeah. We look at it in terms of build, buy, borrow, or bridge, right? So they could build their own talent through internal training programs, starting people out in certain positions and then training them for other roles they need. They could buy it by working with the staffing agency, of course. And then borrow and bridge is more about collaboration, working with other companies to try and either share talent in the particular marketplace or look at mapping out the talent in the marketplace and how they would fit into different roles at different companies.
Nice. So what are your clients telling you about the state of recruiting right now on the retail side? I mean, are you hearing any horror stories out there? There's reports of ghosting out there in the job market. How much of that are you hearing out there from your clients?
Yeah. I mean, with the unemployment rate this low for this long, it's a candidate market, right? So the companies that are realizing that this is a candidate-driven market are making some changes, in how they recruit, what they require from candidates before they can get into an interview or into an offer. And the companies that are still feeling like they have the best place to work and they're going to make candidates jump through hoops in order to get the job are the companies that are struggling, to fill these high volume roles, whether it's retail or outside of retail.
Yeah. How daunting is it, a task is it to really, I saw, you see the retailers every fall come out with their hiring announcements, right? I follow those press releases a lot. Target is hiring, 100,000 people in the next, a few months, what it is. I mean, how daunting a challenge is that? Because that just seems crazy, and especially now with the market the way it is. Talk about that challenge if you could a bit.
So companies of that size need to look at two different approaches. Of course, you need to have a national or global hiring campaign. Of course, you need to have that press release and get that attention that you're hiring for the season. But the truth is that's not what's really going to solve all of the problems. The way they're really going to solve all of their talent acquisition needs is by also having a local approach. So whether that's signs when they go into the store or yard signs, if it's a facility or manufacturing or warehouse, or billboards, real grassroots things, newspaper ads, Craigslist ads, things that in recruiting we haven't done in years are coming back in style because that's how you get the attention of someone who's not reading a job posting.
You mentioned the yard signs there. I've seen more hiring yard signs I think I've ever had in my entire life in the past few years. It's crazy, but
they're working though.
Yeah, they do work. I mean,
the truth is they're working. As long as you don't drive them to a website to fill out a half an hour application or an hour application.
Yes.
If that's what your yard sign says, it's not going to be doing you any justice. But if it says, text, hire me to this number, or it says, click this QR code, or it says, go to this, short URL, and the registration on there is just 5 or 6 questions instead of a 30 or 60-minute application, then we're finding those are being highly effective.
Nice. Yes, definitely. It's keeping it short and sweet is a way to go in terms of apply. That brings up a second question I had, which was, are you finding any of your clients finding success with, recruiting on things like the new Facebook job board, for example? That's pretty big in terms of retail and entry-level positions. And any thoughts on that? Yeah,
the really big companies that have huge hiring volumes are struggling with the Facebook jobs ad a bit because typically they don't have a centralized Facebook presence, period. So if you look at, a large grocery chain, they probably don't just have one Facebook page. They probably have 20 or 30 Facebook pages for their different areas or regions. So we see those companies really struggling to harness and maximize that jobs ad. What we're finding more success with is sponsored posts. So being able to use geofencing or use a specific geography so that when the mobile phone goes through that geography, it serves as a sponsored post. Or it's using search or site retargeting. So if they've searched for jobs and they're in this geography, it's going to serve them up a sponsored post. We're finding those are really working. You just have to also make sure you have some sort of social media manager that's managing the comments, or that could, pose a problem for some companies.
Yeah. As an RPO, you deal with all different kinds of, hiring technology across your client base. But at ManpowerGroup, do you have kind of a central way to help them advertise these jobs and do campaigns like that at all? Or how much of that happens at Manpower?
Yeah, especially if I work on the RPO side, the outsourcing side. So for my particular clients, they've usually outsourced a piece or all of their recruiting to us. And so we have to stay on top of all of the recruiting technologies and know which ones are going to play best. That space, as you probably clearly know, is just changing daily.
Yes.
So we actually have a team of people that are dedicated to just trying new technologies and figuring out which new technologies we should pilot with which clients, in finding out which are going to be the most effective in some space. One of my favorite technologies I've already sort of mentioned is, a technology where you can text a certain keyword to a certain number, and then it sends you to a microsite where you can apply, just register with interest for that job. That is working the most effectively for high volume jobs. And then if you attach that to a sponsored Facebook ad, I mean, that is really working pretty clearly for a lot of our high volume needs.
Nice. Any particular technology you use for that? Do you use a vendor? Do you use your own internal texting technology? Or
We use a couple different vendors, depending on the market. So there's a couple different ones we use. I haven't ran into one of those that's terrible. So, and I don't have any that I sponsor necessarily, but there's a couple that work out really well.
Any deployment of things like chatbots, self-scheduling tools, other things like that to help make the hiring process faster?
That's definitely where all of our time is spent piloting right now is AI tools, of course, chatbots, programmatic advertising where, you're using the information that comes back from the hits for the bot then to tell you, okay, let's post Craigslist in this market, but let's not post Craigslist in this market, or let's use this job board in this market, but not this job board in another market.
Yep.
That's where we're spending a lot of our time piloting right now. The truth is, my clients are usually looking for a silver bullet, right? What's the one technology that's going to fill these jobs? And there is no silver bullet and there is no perfect answer.
Definitely not.
It's very geographic and it depends on the position and the role. And so, it's really a matter of finding that perfect symphony, right? The perfect combination of technologies for that role in that city.
What, as you look at 2019, what are you really looking forward to as far as any new tech? I mean, does anything caught your eye?
Well, AI is such a general term, right? I could argue that resume parsing from the 1990s is AI. So I'm most excited about how smart that technology is going to get, though. And so I don't think that AI is going to completely reduce the need for recruiters. I think the human touch and the candidate experience is always going to be there. Yeah. But the smarter the bot gets, the more we're taking off of that front end of identifying talent, list generation, getting people, interested and engaged in the position. And so the more we can cut off of that time, the more efficient recruiting is going to be as a whole, so that then recruiters are only talking to the most qualified and interested candidates. So that's what I'm most excited about is what can we take off the front end of that recruitment cycle with these bots.
Are your clients, asking about things like the bots and things like that? I mean, are they finally realizing that they have to really advance their technology as far as the application process goes to really hire who they want to hire?
Yes, I think I would, if I had to answer yes or no, the answer to that is yes, but there are still certainly, maybe at the hiring manager level, not the company level, hiring managers that have been with the company for a long time and feel like this is a great place to work. Everyone would be lucky to work here. That's still sometimes getting in the way of, allowing us to bring in automation, bring in technology, and get people through the system faster because there are times where hiring managers are sort of stuck in, I'd like to shake someone's hand and meet them and take them on a tour and spend an hour with them before making a decision. And it's hard to get high volume candidates interested in an interview process like that.
Yeah. It's to me, it's all about speed, right? You got to get them in there fast and get it done quickly. Otherwise, they're going to go to the next employer. Yeah. So,
or get the offer out quickly. You take 24 hours to decide on the offer, and they may have already gotten another offer.
Exactly. Yeah.
In that time period.
Definitely. All right, let's talk about the report a bit. It's called Apocalypse or Evolution, What Retail Employers Need to Know About Candidate Preferences. So you surveyed about 2,500 job seekers, I guess, Melissa, but tell us, give us a quick summary of what the report's about, and then I'm curious, what kind of questions did you ask those particular job seekers?
Yeah, great, thanks. So this is the second year we've done this candidate preference research, and particularly in retail. And we partnered with the Retail Industry Leaders Association, or RILA, in the research, and partnered with some of their members to get feedback as well. And what we wanted to know specifically is, how and where they look for jobs, what motivates them to make a career switch or a job switch, what motivates them in their career at all in terms of staying with a company, and also what turns them off about potential employers. Right. And what was important about this year's research is we broke that out. So if you think retail in general, of course, most of the hires are for in-store positions, but that's changing month over month, to be honest, and certainly year over year, where there's a little bit of a shift from in-store to warehouse and distribution as we get a little bit more reliant on e-commerce. And so what we did this year is we broke out all of the answers to those questions into the different job functions as well. So we broke it out by in-store versus warehouse and distribution versus e-commerce versus corporate roles within retail. Mm-hmm. So that was important for us to digest the information that came back as well.
Yeah, this whole warehouse role now is sort of like the new retail job, it seems like, with all the Amazon warehouses and all these other e-commerce places.
Our data.
I was going to say that, there were some, I don't know, is Amazon one of your clients, by the way? I didn't ask that, but are they a client of yours?
Is who one of our clients?
Amazon?
Not on the RPO side, but as ManpowerGroup, yes, they're a ManpowerGroup client.
Gotcha. So do you help staff those warehouses?
In some cases, yeah.
Okay.
The Manpower does. And what's interesting about warehouse and distribution is if you look at the number of roles that are open, it's up 150% since 2015.
Wow.
In 3 years. And every single month it increases. I mean, it's a very, very fast growing.
That's really interesting. It's sort of like a retail job, but without the customer interaction, basically.
Which is attractive to a lot of people.
Yeah, I would think so. I'm always curious what it's like to work in one of those, but show for another day. One of the first kind of takeaways from the article as I read it today was retailers must focus on an employer brand to attract candidates. Can you touch on that a bit? I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, actually, it's growing year over year when we ask candidates how important the company's reputation or the brand reputation is. And it continues to grow, especially in retail. It's growing at a faster rate in retail if we look at the retail industry versus other industries. So what candidates are telling us is that the brand, the market, the position or product that they have in the market is really important to them to decide to apply to that company. And what's interesting about how companies deal with that is they don't always think about employee value proposition in their advertising.
Nope.
So marketing departments are focused on consumers, right? They're focused on the selling the product or the service. But every single advertisement that's out there for the consumer is also saying something about your employment culture and about the type of people you employ. So it's interesting that this continues to grow because it's important for companies to realize that marketing needs to also have a focus on employee value proposition.
Exactly. I'm just going to read a couple of quotes here from the report. It says, retail candidates, regardless of their job, agree with the general consensus that employer-employee trust is the most important aspect of an employer's brand. Candidates for in-store positions are significantly more likely to feel this way than those in warehouse, distribution, and e-commerce. Employer trust is number one among their ranking for that across all industries. But if you're in the kind of the corporate side of things, transparency is more important to those particular seekers. Talk about that transparency for a second, if you could.
Yeah, so transparency in terms of easy things like that, their mission, their values, how they're really going to treat consumers or customers, how they're treating employees in the field, how what the business is doing is going to impact things like pricing and customer experience in the stores. People that work in the corporate offices just want to have total transparency there. Mm-hmm. Also, on the other thing that's interesting about the corporate positions in retail is that if you ask someone that is going into finance or marketing or IT especially, so retail is really struggling filling IT positions, if someone has, a specific developer skill set, they would rather take that coding to a big tech company. But the truth is that we need those types of coders and those developers in the retail space as well, especially as things are moving from in-store to e-commerce. Mm-hmm. But if you ask, someone with that technical degree, they're thinking, why would I want to go to retail? Retail is a dying industry. So that's sort of what drove the title for the paper, Apocalypse or Evolution, because on the corporate side, those people feel like retail is dying. Well, of course, we're not going to close up every brick and mortar store in the U.S. And, buying is still improving year over year in terms when you add in e-commerce and retail. So it's important that we are able to attract people into those corporate positions as well.
Definitely. Just go back to transparency for a second. I was curious how much you guys use Instagram at all. I've read that Instagram is sort of the millennials' Glassdoor, if you will. It's kind of a place where they go to kind of visually look up companies. Are you seeing more of your clients do more, employee postings out there and hashtagging stuff and kind of showing more life at the store and offices, things like that?
I wish I could say yes. A couple progressive companies are, but I feel like companies are still afraid of some of the social media and, who's going to manage the comments if there is a comment on a post, and what are we going to say? And are we going to be edgy in our response? Or are we going to be political and professional? Or are we going to ignore it? And some of the bigger companies get caught up in those answers and just don't do any of it at all because they're not sure how to answer that.
Yeah. Interesting. So there are some data here around different types of job search research and application methods that these candidates like. Why don't you break down some of those for us? Because there's definitely some differences there as far as what they prefer.
Yeah. So, and we have a couple different studies that talk about application. There's another one called Siri, Find Me a Job, where it's really focused on the type of application. And what we know is that most of the high volume, especially in the retail, they're sponsored social media ads that they can click on from a mobile phone or a smartphone are what's getting people in and engaged and interested the fastest. Mm-hmm. And by far, that's the most common method of getting passive candidates' attention when they're not necessarily looking for a job. And then everything after that really drops off. So we thought, if you asked me a year ago, I would have thought that applying through an app, a mobile app, for a major job board, for example, would continue to grow. Mm-hmm. But we actually see it shrinking a bit. And the numbers are going towards the social media and click to apply type of campaigns. Everything after that, mobile apps, texting campaigns, chat on employer site, they all drop off significantly. So this year it was really about social media ads and sort of click to register, click to apply campaigns.
Is the social media ads kind of your, in terms of an ROI standpoint, are they delivering the most value in terms of, spend to application kind of ratio?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Versus like a job board?
And quickly, right? So it works very quickly. You can get ads up within hours and then start seeing candidates the same day.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. So interview preferences. What's the data around that? Tell us about that.
As much as some of us in recruiting would like to hear a different answer, the truth is most of the candidates are still telling us that they prefer in-person interviews. Mm-hmm. There are certainly times where video interviews and virtual career fairs make sense, especially on some of the more corporate positions or the IT positions. But when we're talking about in-store and warehouse and distribution, they are continually telling us in very high numbers that they'd rather have an in-person interview.
Interesting. Are any of your clients using video interviews at all in terms of on the retail side of things? I did when I was a corporate recruiter at a cruise line. We tried the video interview thing for for kind of the pre-screening stuff, and we just found that the candidates about 20% maybe actually completed them if we required it. So we kind of abandoned it at that point. But what are you seeing out there among your client base?
Yeah, if we add a video interview in as one of the first steps, before a phone screen, then the fall off is too drastic. It's not worth it.
Yeah.
Where we are using it is for drivers. So, as e-commerce in warehouse and distribution increases, the need for drivers is increasing. Mm-hmm. And drivers is one of the top 5 hardest jobs to fill in the U.S. right now. So where we're using video is maybe for a hiring manager interview for drivers. So we can get that done much faster than trying to connect the driver who may be in a different state at the moment to the hiring manager. So we're using video then, but that's after a phone screen.
Gotcha.
If we put video interview too early in the process, the fallout is too great.
Yeah. What do you using things like HireVue, those types of technologies out there to do this stuff? Or?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And Montage is a good one.
Montage,
yeah. I would say those are the top 2.
Okay. All right, let's take a quick break here, listeners. We're talking with Melissa Hassett of Manpower Group. I want to mention HireTool, our other sponsor today. HireTool, the recruiter's best friend. They won Product of the Year in Best Business Intelligence Group's Big Awards for Business. It's an AI-driven HR technology company that's a sourcing tool. It's powered by a proprietary AI matching engine, and they enable recruiters to find and engage the right people with the right skill sets 10 times faster. So their platform converts unstructured data from more than 700 million profiles across 30-plus platforms and the open web into really rich, holistic professional profiles. And you can take this data, enrich it with contact data, rank them in terms of how well they match those those job requirements and automatically adjust that ranking for the next round of candidates based on your recruiter's interaction with that data. So it really helps you create a proactive talent pipeline, really, that grows more precise over time. So find them on the web at hiretual.com. That's HIRETUAL.com. All right. So talk to me a little bit about the kind of the takeaways from this, because you have kind of 5 specific takeaways that companies can use to bridge that retail talent gap. First one is recruit for the job, not the industry. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, especially when we're talking about positions that are not in store. So we've been talking about the corporate positions, the IT positions, even warehouse and distribution. They require a different type of recruit. So we're going to find people in different ways, and it's important to market that actual job, not just the industry. So if we just put out, if a major big box store just says we are hiring, everyone who reads that ad is going to assume it's for an in-store position. So if a major big box store wants to hire for IT, they just need to go on the tech job boards, go through the tech spaces and say they're hiring a developer or a coder, and take the focus off of retail a bit. So that's what we mean about just really focusing on the job and not just the industry as a whole.
Number 2, I thought was the most interesting, which is positioning the retail position as a career path, which I don't think a lot of companies do, but talk to me about how that works.
Yeah, this is probably the one I talk to clients the most about. So when we'll just pick on the IT positions a bit, when they're trying to hire a coder, my first thought is, don't you have thousands or maybe tens of thousands of people that work in your store that are going to school right now? So why not start talking to those folks that are in school or are taking vocational classes about what's next for them past this part-time in-store position? Or past this part-time, seasonal warehouse position. Talk to them about what interests them. Talk to them about the other positions that you might have available. Each of these big retailers has a built-in talent pool of people who are working for them or have worked for them in the last year or two. And so we're really trying to push them to start those conversations early and building loyal employees that will stay with them and grow their career internally.
Yeah. Number 3 is win-win work models. What does that one mean?
It could be a couple different things. One of the things we didn't talk about, Chris, is how much candidates are telling us they need schedule flexibility. That's coming up quite a bit. So one of the top 3 reasons someone will want to work in store or in warehouse and distribution is for schedule flexibility. They usually have something else taking up their time, right? Whether they care for someone, they're a musician or an artist, or they're going to school, or they're semi-retired. All of these folks have something else that pulls their time and attention away. And so one of the win-win work models we've been talking about is, being able to provide some sort of technology internally so that employees can give up shifts, pick up shifts, exchange shifts. That sort of work model internally doesn't necessarily have to do with recruiting, but is going to be a huge benefit to attracting people into the company. And then we were also talking to companies about working more collaboratively. So we all know about holiday season, and that gets a lot of press and attention, of hiring people for November and December.
Yep.
But there are also a ton of retailers that start hiring in February, March, April, for the spring and the summer season. And so what if those companies collaborated and shared the talent? What if someone went to go work for a department store in the holiday season and then went to go work for a home improvement store in the spring? And then went to go work for an office store for back to school? And couldn't those companies collaborate to share that talent and share that recruiting effort? Yeah,
we almost need like a central database of all these people. Companies
I have one, actually. I've created one.
Have you?
It's called workmyway.com. Yeah, workmyway.com is one we use just for our clients to help with some of that collaboration.
I haven't heard of that site. So what does that site do? It's basically like a profile database, or that anyone can join?
We bring candidates into that database and have them register for the type of job they might want, right? So whether they want retail or call center or warehouse and distribution or drivers. And so we pool the talent there, and then clients that want to be a part of this coalition or collaboration use this as a source to pull people out of when they're looking for positions in that particular area. And we built it specifically for this, originally for this idea of seasonality, where we could take candidates from one employer to the next employer throughout the year.
That's interesting. And how long has that site been up?
About 2.5 years.
Yeah.
Relatively new.
Yeah, you're seeing there's a bunch of, apps now like Onolo and, Shift Gig, and you're all kind of going that way in terms of a central database like that. So that's interesting. I didn't realize that it was a Manpower site, so we'll definitely put that out there, workmyway.com for the listeners. So great.
I think it's the way of the future. It's the only way of solving that schedule flexibility issue, right? And still getting all the shifts covered.
Total. You're going to have an app for that soon? Need one of those.
Well, that would be ideal. Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, just pull up your phone and do it. They say that Uber is going to getting into the staffing business. Have you heard that, Melissa?
I did. Yeah, I'm watching that very closely, actually, and I think that is this is another platform in a way to get sort of a public marketplace of people who can pick up different shifts.
Yes.
So that idea of changing, versus needing a specific headcount, you need 20 headcount to run this store. The truth is you have 100 shifts a week. Let's figure out how to cover those shifts. And I think that's what UberWorks is really headed towards. Yeah,
there's fascinating things ahead in the job market, that's for sure. It's it's really being driven, I think, by this unemployment rate and the lack of talent out there. So it's going to be an interesting couple of next years here. So, well, the report is called again "Apocalypse or Evolution: What retail employers need to know about candidate preferences." Where can they get it, Melissa?
The easiest way is to Google ManpowerGroup in retail, and it will be the first one that pops up. People can also connect with me on LinkedIn. So it's Melissa Hassett, Hassett, and all of the papers that we've talked about today are connected to my profile there and are easy to grab for free.
Awesome. And we'll link to it in the show notes as well and on the blog at RegTech Media for the listeners. All right, well, so appreciate the time today. I just got to, let's wrap this up by, what are your last words of advice here as we get into 2019? Anything new coming out from Manpower Group? Feel free to tell us what's on your mind.
Yeah, for us, we're just focused on the tight labor market in the U.S. in particular, in figuring out that talent gap. And in the way we think we're going to fill out that talent gap is by having employers realize that it's a candidate market and what are some of the subtle things that they can do to make their position more attractive and more engaging for talent. And then also being able to really map out the talent per area, per skill set, so that we know who's available when certain positions come up. And so we're just really continuing to work on identifying what those skills are in those areas and what the future forecasting of positions are and making that connection for employers.
Awesome. Well, appreciate the time today, Melissa, and definitely want to have you back too. I think there's a lot more we can talk about as far as recruiting and technology and how this all works. So definitely love to have you back on in the new year.
Yeah, I'd love that, Chris. This was fun. Thank you.
Awesome. All right, well, that will do for this edition of the RegTech Podcast. Thanks again to our sponsors, Work Here and HiredTool. Subscribe to this show wherever you get your podcast. And if you are an iTunes subscriber, leave a review, and I'll be sure to thank you on air. Thanks for listening, everyone. And remember, always be recruiting.
Another episode of RegTech is in the books. Follow Chris on Twitter at Chris Russell or visit regtechmedia.com, where you can find the audio and links for this show on our blog. RegTech Media helps both HR tech firms and employers to get more clients or candidates through our consulting practice and online tools. So be sure to check out our sites like recruiting headlines, job fairing, and more to stay up to date on what's happening in recruiting. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you soon on the next episode of RegTech, the Recruiting Technology Podcast.